Yeah, always good to have you along for the conversation as we dive right into it here. Is it Thursday, man? The week's mostly gone already. It's remarkable. It's remarkable the speed with which these weeks pass when there's so much going on in the headlines. And just want to keep you up to speed on everything we can. Demian Brady is the Vice President of Research for the National Taxpayers Union Foundation. He joins me. Demian, how are you today?
I'm well. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Now, you think that we're too generous when presidents or vice presidents or other leaders of Congress retire or go on their merry way. You think maybe we should trim the bill for the former presidents and the perks that they get. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, a lot of people aren't aware of all the benefits that former presidents get. They do have some responsibilities pertaining to their office that linger on after they leave the White House. So back in 1958, Congress passed a law providing for office for personnel, or providing funding for an office and personnel and office equipment and things like that for former presidents. And the idea behind it was that at the time, former President Truman was down on his luck. And so they wanted to help him out to preserve the dignity of the office of the president after they leave the office. But, it turns out in recent years when his widow's papers were released that he really had a lot more wealth than was understood at the time. And now in the modern days, President Biden has just signed a $10 million book deal. Presidents can go out and make speeches and get hundreds of thousands of dollars a pop at that. And, there are opportunities for all kinds of production deals with Netflix, such as Obama has. So these perks that we're continuing to provide today, we ought to have a cap on that. So that way we're running up about $5 million a year in some of these perks provided to former presidents. So it's time to rein that in, especially given our massive deficit and the $37 trillion in debt that we have.
Well, presidents and members of Congress like this term means testing, right? I don't think we have a former president, not in my lifetime, that was a pauper. So maybe they don't need any of that. I'll give them the Secret Service protection, obviously. But beyond that, do they really need anything?
That's a good question. Maybe we could continue to provide funding for an office for a certain period of time. Let's phase it out. Senator Joni Ernst has introduced the presidential a bill that would reform the perks provided for former presidents. It would cap the pension amount that they get, and it would limit the office expenses, especially if they have wealth above $400,000, which in the modern era, they all have extreme amount of wealth when they leave the White House.
Yeah, I mean, good grief. Barack Obama became worth hundreds of millions of dollars, right? I mean, let's just be honest about that. Bill and Hillary Clinton seem to siphon plenty of money into their accounts, whether ethically or unethically, that's for others to determine, but they end up with a lot of money. They don't need my taxpayer dollars to pay anything. That's my opinion. Joe Biden's not broke either. I mean, he's got beach houses and other properties. Why would we concern ourselves with any of that? I agree with you. We need to trim that back. How much money did we spend? You say $5 million per? I mean, but then you've got presidents, vice presidents.
For all the current former presidents combined, we're spending about $5 million a year for their pension and the office perks that they get. And you mentioned former President Biden. He's an interesting case because he is eligible for a separate congressional pension that's on top of his presidential pension. He served in the Senate for so many years, and that also includes his 8 years as vice president, which is a Senate-based office. So he also gets a very generous congressional pension on top of that. So just with his pension alone, he makes more in retirement than the current president gets, $400,000.
Right, and Trump gives his away, but that's fine. So you get a pension for being vice president, a pension for being president, a pension for being a senator. If you had served in the House, you get a pension. You'd be 4X on this deal.
Yeah, there's not too many people in the past who've had so many years in the Senate and then as well serving in the White House as well.
No, but it happened. And so therefore, the Presidential Allowance Modernization Act, look, these guys don't need the money. And I don't care if they think they earned it. They're serving us, the American people. And most of these presidents spend too much money doing too many things that shouldn't have been done in the first place. So maybe they could atone for their spending spree by not taking this money.
And one thing to remember with all this, This bill was enacted in the past, just before Obama was set to leave the White House. He vetoed it
Of course
just
he
before
did.
he was set to collect these benefits. So I think if you put this bill in front of Donald Trump, he would sign it in a heartbeat.
Right. You know, what's a Mike Pence? I don't know what his net worth is. He's not on your graph here, but he gets money too, doesn't he?
He is eligible for a pension as well. I don't have the amount of that on the top of my head. We do have that information up on our website, though.
There you go. So, estimated net worth, by the way, I found this fascinating of former presidents. Bill Clinton, $120 million, which I'm sure he came by legally. Barack Obama, $70 million. George W. Bush, $40 million. The oil man is running in third place here. Kind of interesting. And Joe Biden, $10 million. Of course, Joe Biden used to brag that he had the lowest net worth of anybody in Congress, which I thought was a strange thing to brag about. But I agree with you. I agree with you. Let's get these things reduced and get them off the books. I mean, honestly, we don't need to spend money on people that are, flush, I suppose. Demian, greatly appreciate it. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, these wealthy former presidents, they don't need this extra income, and taxpayers certainly need relief.
Yeah, we got that right. Lower taxes on me first. Demian Brady, thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thanks a lot.
Good stuff. All right. The one big beautiful bill, tax reforms, marks an important step toward restoring a government that trusts the people to drive economic prosperity. We'll talk more about that. Lowering taxes, putting more money in your pocket. In fact, if you reduce taxes to zero, the economic boom in this country would be unprecedented. Of course, they're too scared to do that. They don't want to trust you with the money. How dare you be trusted with all that money? Yeah, we'll take a break. It's the Steve Gruber Show.